We are here today with Sandra Healy, who is the head of diversity and inclusion and equality at DCU. Welcome, Sandra.
Thank you.
And also Amanda O'Farrell, who is a competing lecturer at IT Tala. And both of them are also listed in Diversen's top 20 diversity leaders to watch in 2018. We are very lucky to have you both here. Thank you so much for coming again.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you would like to introduce yourselves and how did you actually get interested in diversity at the first place, that would be really good.
Yeah, I suppose I can talk for Ireland now, so stop me. And it probably does help me in my diversity work, in fairness. So I was in the tech industry, so I was in the tech industry in telecoms, and I worked across the UK and Ireland for 20 years. And I've done everything from technical engineering into pre-sales, consulting, into everything, into management roles. And throughout that career, well, actually, I grew up in a house with 3 boys, right? So I learned to find my voice pretty early on. And then throughout my career in the tech industry, I sometimes was in teams where I was the only woman in teams of 10, 15 men. And, you know, it really didn't matter. It never really impacted me or never affected me at all. I certainly never felt like I was treated any way differently. I always managed to make sure that I got my point across and it was taken on board. But I think where I realised that things started to be different and maybe some bias started coming into play was when I decided I wanted to move into management positions. And as soon as I decided I wanted to move up the ladder, all of a sudden now I wasn't one of the gang anymore. Now I was fair game and I was competition. And in an industry then where you might have 6 people going for one job and you're the only woman, that's not an equal playing field at all. So it was really at that point, so that was one. I have lots of different proof points. I'll tell you one other one. I was asked to go to a conference one time when I was working for Telefonica, and they were creating a global tech team, and there were 310 people brought to the UK for 3 days. There were 10 women in the room, 10, right, for 3 days, and one of them, the only woman on the stage for 3 days was the woman who was interviewing the 3 Spanish guys sitting in the big conference room. I'm not joking. And I was like, there's something wrong. This is it's not that long ago. So there's all these small things. I think from a personal perspective, for me, fairness is absolutely critical. I live my life by that. And it's the one thing, and I think that's what's brought me to diversity work is, and I say to people, don't step over it. It's very similar to your message and yours, you know. And if I talk to a group of young people who are starting out in their careers, that's the one thing I say to them is don't step over it. Don't leave it behind. Be part of the change. Speak up. Go and find the diversity and inclusion team within your organisation and get support. Don't try and carry it alone, but to be part of the change. And I think it's absolutely fantastic to see this group of people here, and I'm going to stop in a second. I was asked to go into PwC. Deborah and her colleagues asked me to go in, and they'd heard me speaking on a podcast about gender diversity, and they asked me, they said, we're going to challenge you. We want you now to talk about cultural diversity. And I was thinking, holy shit, it's not something I'd ever looked at before, but you know what, I thought, okay, let's do it, you know. And you know what I realised in going in, so it was in very senior, all the partners and everything were there. I was very scared, but I did it. But you know, the one thing I realised when I was doing it is that I can be an ally. I never thought about that before, because I was always looking at diversity and inclusion through my eyes of being a female and being in tech. But you know, and it's not that I'm not aware of privilege, but it made me recognise that here I am putting together a presentation to go into a corporate organisation to represent a group of people that are the same as me, and I can speak for them. I can have a voice and use my knowledge and my privilege to go in and support and start a conversation, but maybe other people who feel a little uncomfortable about it. So for me, that's why I was absolutely delighted, and I had said to you about the culture. I think this is absolutely the right time. Full employment. This is the time in Ireland now where we need to start working and start having the conversation and creating a space to have the conversations in workplaces around culture and diversity and inclusion. Thank you. I know that was...
That's a very good starting point for, because everybody has their own perspective and everybody's life is different. So the way that you realize things are not going well for you, maybe that's the time that you realize that, okay, there are some other people that I could be an advocate for them as well. So that's very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Amanda, how did you get interested with diversity at the first place?
Okay, so like Sandra, I worked in the tech industry, and for Can, I was a software engineer for a number of years with various companies. The year I left college, 50% of my class were females, so honestly I was unaware of a big issue, if I'm honest about it. I was young, probably slightly immature. But one of my first interviews I did, the guy said to me, "We only want real techies here. Now, are you a coder or are you a real techie?" And I said, okay, I'm not entirely sure to answer that. And he said, okay, here's a little thing. What have you got on your person at the moment that's techie? Okay, now this is a good few years ago. So I took out my Palm Pilot and I said, okay, so I have a Palm Pilot, told him what I used it for, didn't really think any more of it. I joined that company, and on a company night out, that guy said to me that it wasn't the fact that it was a Palm Pilot, it was you were a female with a Palm Pilot. I couldn't get over that. When I was thinking back on this today, because I was coming in here, I thought, you know, roll down the line a few years, if I was asked that, I might pull out an iPhone now and baby wipes might come out with it. And what would you have thought of me then, you know? So it's a really silly thing to do in an interview. But anyway, fast forward a few years and I've become lecturer in IT Tala, and I've been there since 2002. And IT Tala, it was established to essentially to focus on a disadvantaged area, very high levels of unemployment, very low levels of uptake in third level education. So we're put there for a reason, okay? And after a couple of years of working there, I took on this role of year head. Now the idea of this is, you have maybe 130 students in front of you, and if they have academic issues, they can come to you. I'm falling behind, I've missed a CA, whatever it is, they can come to me. And what I learned through talking to these students, okay, huge number of the students coming into Tala are what we call first generation college goers, okay? Now I don't mean they're the first of their siblings. I mean they are the first people in their family to go to college. They have no educational role model. They have no one to ask questions of, okay? So that was one thing that jumped out at me. The second thing then is that when I talk to them about coming to events like this, or you know, some of the companies are really good about holding events these days, they suffer from the imposter syndrome, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard of. They have a lack of confidence, and they don't feel like they have a place in these big, amazing buildings in these tech companies. So that was one of the things that struck me when, as I say, I was in Tala a couple of years. Now, following on from that, I myself did a training course in one of the big, very big companies a couple of years ago. I better not mention a name. And left the training room to go to the bathroom, and there was 150 guys sitting in the room. So off I trotted back, and on the last day they said, you know, do you guys have any feedback about the course? It was amazing. And I kind of said, you know, there's no girls in this office, what's going on? And the guy who was training me said, you're a lecturer, the colleges are not sending us the girls. I kind of went, you know, he's actually right. So I went back and I looked at our numbers for the previous 10 years, and the number of girls choosing to study computing courses at third level, certainly in my institute, dropped, and it is getting less and less. And the national average at the moment is 10%. I have 130 students sitting in front of me next Monday. 10% of those are going to be girls, okay? So I got very focused on the gender issue, because as a lecturer, all I can see in front of me is gender. I don't know anything about religion maybe, or cultural, or socio-economic, although a lot of them are from disadvantaged backgrounds. So I started to look at the gender issue, and through looking at the gender issue, I realised that a lot of the reasons that were turning girls off studying tech, okay, I'm in computer science, but STEM in general, are the same issues that are turning other minorities off studying it. So if you start to look at one, I'm starting to learn so much more, Okay, so that's really what got me interested. I'm delighted to be here, and it's great to see so many people here. Thank you for inviting me along.
Or did you come to a conclusion?
Wait.
Did you figure? I'm so curious as to what might have stopped. Why are the girls' numbers going down?
Yeah, that was my next question.
Yeah. Okay.
No, please. Yeah.
Okay, so through the initiative that I started, I tried to get a lot of secondary school girls in, and I talked to their teachers a lot while they're in there. And a couple of the things they said, computer science not being on the leaving cert, girls are very cautious about what they choose. So when they've had no exposure to a subject, they're not really willing to chance it. They see the bro culture in tech, and they don't like it. And lack of accessible role models, not Sheryl Sandberg, role models that she's 1 in a million, and girls, look at those odds, she's 1 in a billion, sorry. What they want is accessible role models that will stand in front and say, look, I know exactly what you're talking about. So the lack of role models, and you said that earlier, is a huge issue, I believe, for these girls. Okay?
And I think that there's one other thing which is, and I'm part of a network called Connecting Women in Technology, and we focus on attract, retain and promote women in STEM and into STEM careers. And part of that programme is we deliver workshops, a voluntary effort now through all the companies that are part of the group in schools, and it's to create the role models, so to kind of tackle that, but it's meaningful careers. That's the one thing, that's one of the things. Women and young women find it very difficult to translate an engineering degree into, like, I could be working on medical devices and saving millions of people around the world. So there's no one single thing. Some of it is systemic, it's about the leaving cert, but some of it is around access to role models. I've also heard people talk about we teach our girls to be perfect and our boys to be brave. And some of the research shows, you know, in coder dojos and things like that, that if young women, when they're coding, if it's not perfect, they'll delete. Where the boys are going, I know it doesn't work and it's not right and it's okay. And that's part of our culture and the stereotype. So it's complex. Like in third level in DCU, for example, we've 18% female intake into tech. And then the problem we have then is, how do we create role models in higher education, because the pipeline isn't there. So that means then we can't convert them into female academic role models. So it's a real issue. And our Dean of the Faculty of Computing and Engineering, Lisa Looney, did some research, and she was the first time I've ever seen it, where she tracked how many young women have the tech or the STEM subjects and then go into the leaving cert, and what are they doing? Are they picking the tech careers? And what she found was that when young women don't know what to do,